We'll start in just a minute as soon as a few more commissioners get up here. Okay, thank you for your patience. Thanks. So we call to order the August 4th meeting of the Kalamazoo City Planning Commission. All in attendance are welcome. First order, may we have a roll call?
Burgess.
Here.
Chambers.
Present.
Harrison.
Here.
Milliken. Phelps. Telko. Pitts. Swan.
Here.
Bias.
Here. Commissioners, you have before you tonight's formal agenda. Are there any changes or additions?
There are none.
May we have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Burgess,
Support.
support by Chambers. All those in favor respond yes.
Yes.
Any in opposition respond no. Okay, that has been approved. Commissioners, you also have the minutes of the July 7th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the meeting minutes as noted? Okay,
Seeing none, I'll move approval of the minutes for our July 7th meeting.
thanks, Commissioner Burgess.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Swan. All those in favor respond yes.
Yes.
Any in opposition respond no. Okay, minutes are approved. Chair, are there, that's me, are there any additional communications or announcements?
There are none at this time.
Thanks. So we will move on to the public hearing. So by way of explanation, those in the audience will observe several opportunities for public comment. Those are listed with each public hearing and also at item H. During the public hearings, following the staff presentations, we will invite the applicant or representative to present their 10-minute request. Following that, the public is invited to step up to the podium, state your name and address, and present your comments within a 3-minute limit. Following your comments, please sign your name and address on the sign-in sheet at the podium. And so we will now open the public hearing and hear our first request, which is PC 2022.07, vacation of Cooley Street between Eleanor and West Water Street. May we have a staff report?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bobby Durkee. I'm a planner in the Department of Community Planning and Development. And one of my roles is to assist applicants and present street vacation requests. So what we have in front of us today is a petition to vacate, which is essentially abandon and turn the land over to an applicant, which goes over the first people who have rights to it are the adjacent landowners. So the request today is to vacate a portion of Cooley Street between West Water and Eleanor Street, which is a few blocks just in that direction, and there will obviously be more stuff to show where it's at. And just an interesting tidbit I put on the cover page here is this street is part of the original plat and dates back to 1845. So I put the little picture of the plat there. So what is on the screen now is an aerial showing the further zoom out of the view today. At the bottom of the screen is West Michigan Avenue, and on the right side there you can see North Rose Street, and I have highlighted in blue the portion of Eleanor Street to be vacated on a more modern aerial photograph. This image here is the way that the land would be divvied up if the street was vacated. Each of the 4 blocks that are surrounding this street are held by title by ACW. Each one is just a different company of the same entity. And in the middle there, the creek, Arcadia Creek, which runs in this vicinity and is the western leg of the pedestrian trail in that area. The creek itself is actually a parcel of land held by the DDA on both sides, which itself was a vacated alley, I don't know how long ago, but it's clearly been some time. And the trail itself, the access and the maintenance of all of that is covered under easements, which show up on the survey here. So the different colors represent how the land would be divvied up post-development, or post-vacation, I should say. Moving forward, I have some photographs of the view. This portion of downtown, if you're familiar, is pretty empty compared to some other areas, mostly parking lots and some staging areas. The view here is looking south on Cooley Street from Eleanor, kind of in a more easterly direction. Off to the left side of the screen there is Eleanor Street going on towards the new hotel that opened there, and then the right side is looking due south to where Cooley ends currently at Water Street. And this image again is also looking southerly, but more in the westerly direction, and shows Eleanor going off to the right and Cooley going there down to Water Street. Going down to the other side of this portion of street to be vacated, we are now looking north on Cooley Street from West Water Street. For a little bit of perspective, on the right side there is the new courthouse under construction, and again, you see the parking lots adjacent. And in addition to that, from the mid-block, I got a view here of the pedestrian path. This is looking westerly from the center of Cooley Street. And here is an image looking easterly down the path. And again, this central part was being shown as being connected with the DDA parcel to make a real long parcel out of that. Looking at the land use and the zoning of the area where the vacation is proposed, we have the maps here from the staff report, and it highlights the block in question. The current zoning of all the adjacent blocks is D2, and as a reminder, our D zoning works in a kind of a rank for form and density standards, from D1 being our primary streets at Burdick and Michigan there, to D2 on the outer edge of the shell, if you will, and then D3. And as mentioned, it's all currently zoned D2. Here we have a current land use map. It looks like some of them are considered vacant, some are considered commercial. Maybe they have a little bit of activity. The land use is all vacant or parking lot parcels at this time. And as you can see, all of the parcels will still have right-of-way frontage on other sides there. And one more map in reference to the street vacation is the future land use. And as you can see, the entire area is the downtown future land use. So the long-term goal and vision of this area is what it's already zoned. So that's the quick overview of a lot of the things mentioned in the staff report. And lastly, what we have here is what's triggering the request is the applicant is seeking to redevelop the parcels for some mixed-use buildings. This view is looking south, and I included the south because you can see the post-development there. There's still a roadway and a throughway through there as part of the plan, and I'll cover that in my rationale for staff recommendations. So this is, that's Park Street on the left side of the screen, Westnedge on the right side, and then Eleanor across the top, and the buildings are fronted up there close to Water Street. When a street vacation request is proposed, the criteria or the rationale is in a policy document. Street vacations tie back to the Enabling Act, and instead of a zoning ordinance requirement, it's in our policy. And those items were looked at in the staff report, and highlighting some of those in the review of the application and request before bringing it to Planning Commission is the closure of the street or the stretch of right-of-way will not close off any adjacent streets access to a road. If someone couldn't get to a road, the application wouldn't move forward, and it's largely underutilized parking lots and vacant land at this time. As part of the process, when an application is brought in, it's sent out to all the various city departments, public services, public safety, and in this instance, if there's private utility holders. So as part of that process, all the departments were okay with it. There were some conditions sought as maintaining easements over the right-of-way. We have stormwater infrastructure. There's a sizable water pipe under there as well. And then if it's vacated, that easements would be placed for that. All of the private utilities that exist in there, the applicant was able to provide written confirmation that they are all either have nothing in there, are in favor of it, and if they do have anything, they want to be included in those easements. And with the unique characteristic of a mid-block crossing on a vacated street of the pathway easement, we've already had the early discussions, and the applicant intends to close those two pieces so that if it is vacated, that pathway would continue through there, that the same rights, we wouldn't have some sort of dead zone between the two spots, because currently it's right-of-way, so all the crossings and all that's covered as public land. From a traffic need or the capacity need of the area, this is nowhere near a high-traffic street. I was able to get all my photos and not see one car. There's sufficient capacity on the adjacent roads around there, And internally, once this comes in through site plan review, or even in our preliminary meetings, we're already talking about when this is a two-way. So that wasn't highlighted as a concern. And lastly, again, once, or if it is vacated and the property once redeveloped, the developer has already accommodated design to make sure that the throughway exists, and that easements would be in place, not only for the utilities under there, but for the pathway crossing. And lastly, I will say, the DDA in June did hear this request, since that narrow piece of land was a public body instead of an individual. They took a look at it, and their intent was to have their legal counsel work with the applicant's legal counsel to work out a lot of those easement details. And I understand that work is ongoing and everything is looking good. And lastly, the street vacation today by the Planning Commission opens the opportunity for the City Commission to hear it. The Planning Commission gives a recommendation to the City Commission, and they will make a decision on it as well. If there's any questions on anything related to the staff report or this presentation, I'm here.
Commissioners, are there any technical questions for staff?
Yes. When you speak of the...
Mike.
There we go with the mic, thank you. When you talk about the requested utility easement, I also heard you say that the applicant intends to maintain the pathway. Does that mean it's not going to be part of the easement, or should we build that the DDA pathway as explicitly part of the easement? What would be your recommendation?
I would describe it as two layers of easement. So we would have the former right-of-way described as an easement, but then there would be another east-west easement to connect it. And that's the way it shows up on the survey right now. I think of it more as an ingress, egress, and the easement describes the maintenance. I've been provided the easement language of the existing trail, which has been in place for some years. That would just be extended or duplicated to include this land with a legal description. As far as a condition for this action, I don't think that is necessary, because when the easements are recorded through the due diligence process before the land is sold, that would be taken care of, or during site plan review. There may be reasons to slightly move that based off of final improvements in buildings. But similarly, ensuring that pathway easement, that second layer of easement on top of the utility easement, that's something we could manage in site plan review as a condition of approval as well.
Okay, I understand that. I just hesitant to be less than explicit with something about what an applicant intends to do, and rather make it explicit. But if you do that at the site plan review level, that makes sense. Thank you.
And thinking in a sense, right now it's public right-of-way, so we probably wouldn't put an easement over public right-of-way. So it's one of those items I think the order of operations would be either through the real estate transaction or through site plan review.
Other questions? Bobby, I have one. So that we're all clear, when we approve a vacation, does that take immediate effect? You mentioned this also goes to City Commission. When would a street vacation take effect?
It doesn't take effect immediately. There are 2 readings by the City Commission, and then by our policy and our internal work, the applicant has 60 days to work with the city attorney's office and the assessor to provide the relevant real estate transfer documents.
Okay, and just for context, one of the reasons I'm asking is because there's a lot of construction there on Park Street, and I've noticed that Cooley is sometimes a cut through for those who want to bypass that, or when would, assuming all goes through in the 60 days and the transfer is approved, does it become public knowledge that this is no longer a public street? How does that happen?
It could become public knowledge in the fact that there's a deed transfer. This is the public hearing to discuss it before all of that happens, but outside of that, it would just be you would have to actively, I guess, go to the county and find out, so,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah,
I don't know what the
it's
construction's going to look
literally-
like on Park, and yeah. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, will the applicant please step up to the podium? They will have 10 minutes to present the request.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Wenzel. I'm here representing Plaza Corp. Plaza Corp is representing I guess you'd call it the parent company to the ownership entities that are represented on your agenda item today. So the ACW 1-2, North-South, those are ownership entities for the properties. So I appreciate you having us on the agenda this evening and taking the time to serve as you're doing on the Planning Commission, and in hearing this matter before you this evening. So thank you. So we're forward here. So Plaza Corp's, we are heavily invested here in Kalamazoo, as you may know. We've been here since 1988. Started back 30 plus years ago, investing and redeveloping in mainly historic redevelopment projects here in the urban core of downtown Kalamazoo, in particular over at Spearflex and where the Beer Exchange is and Globe. Those were some of our first downtown urban core redevelopment projects, and which was not an area where a lot of stuff was happening at the time. So it's kind of like this. It's an area where there's not a lot going on. There's starting to be some emerging development in this quadrant. So we're happy to be part of helping move that forward and help the development move forward in this northwest quadrant of downtown. We look at strategic partners in a lot of what we do. So we usually partner with the MEDC, with brownfield authorities. A lot of our projects are brownfield or historic renovation type projects, and other groups, even National Park Service for historic accreditation and tax credits, to help make some of these projects work, really. Some of them that are, especially when we're doing a redevelopment of a historic project, it's tough to make the numbers work sometimes. So we work with a lot of parties to collaborate and put pieces together. And we also help, we collaborate we help communities grow. And so we feel like part of what we do is to help create spaces, cool spaces that are intriguing and help people be successful in their own collaboration and development of their businesses. So what we do, this is just a listing, we're an owner-developer, and so we do everything from beginning to end to turnover. We manage the properties ourselves. We don't represent third parties, meaning we don't list other people's properties, just so you have a good understanding of who we are. We always look at things long-term, so we're always looking at long-term hold, as we look at investment in projects and investment in communities. We don't look at build something and flip it when it's done. So it's just a different perspective that we take, that some people don't look at things that way. These are a few of the transformational projects that we've done here in Kalamazoo. Of course, on the left is the Exchange Building, right down here on the corner. On the far right is the Hilton Garden Inn, a conversion of a historic Masonic temple that was slated to see the wrecking ball at one point in time, and now it's a pretty cool hotel project, combination of historic and new construction. So that one was really a fun one to work on. And then where Tower Pinkster is located over by the festival site. Again, that was one of our first projects to work on the campus over there of buildings in that area. We've also worked on quite a bit of retail redevelopment and development in Portage and Ashtimo and Kalamazoo at Whites and Westnedge. So there's we do a lot of work in the region. We're regional based, we're Kalamazoo based, but we work in other communities as well as Kalamazoo. So This is again, a rendering of the project. This is looking actually from the other view that Bobby showed you, and this is what the Water Street perspective, just to give you a good perspective of the project. So this, I'll give you a project overview so you understand the scope of the overall project. This is a 2 or 3 phase project. It would be one building being built first, and then a second building, and then on the north side of the creek area, that's where parking would be for the first phase, and then we would work in parking into the future phases. So we have parking to support the project. But in this first phase, the parking would be surface parking and parking within the building itself. We have the first 2 floors of parking in the project, and then we go up from there. So this would bring about 400 units with the 2 buildings that are identified, new residential units into the marketplace. It would bring about $100 million in investment into these 2 parcels, or into these 4 parcels. This would be Green Globes certified, which is similar to LEED. It just has a different certification process. But so we do that on all of our projects now going forward. And again, it activates the northwest quadrant, which is really just is ready. It's ready to be activated and connected to the campuses that are adjacent and to the adjacent neighborhoods. And it also brings a residential mixed-use development, again, in close proximity to the universities, but also the neighborhoods, connecting them to downtown a little bit better than what's happening now. There's a little bit of a void there in the connection between the neighborhoods and the downtown urban core, and we're looking to help with that. It also adds density and walkability. And it would also remove the blighted buildings that are currently on the site. This site historically was the Gilmore Auto Dealership, and they had buildings that were related to that dealership, body shop, auto repair, and automotive sales buildings. So this would include, of course, the demo of those buildings and removing blighted buildings that are on the site, and also cleanup of the site in general. Along the creek there, it gets overgrown and needs to be maintained better, and that's part of what we would do in with the whole project is to do that in this stretch of these 2 blocks along the creek. Here's a visual, again, from the Water Street perspective, but just to give you some perspective of the more of an up-close view of the project. And then this is the same perspective that Bobby had on his screen earlier to show you the 2 buildings. We're in the concept design phase, so it's probably going to be 2 buildings of about 10, maybe 12 stories, including the 2 stories of parking within each building. But we're not final on the design, but we know there's going to be 2 buildings, approximately 400 units. So let me move forward here. Here's an aerial map. We already looked at this, showing the proximity of the site. This shows the ownership, multiple ownerships, and Bobby did mention about the DDA ownership of the creek. We have been in close communication with the DDA. They support this action. They support the vacation, and also we're working in collaboration to figure out the going forward of that area. So it's very likely that there would be a conveyance to the DDA, and then the DDA would convey the above ground responsibilities and the street responsibilities to us, and then they would retain the creek rights and all the rights that go with what they currently have under the bridge, to put it in context. So that could be the next step. That way they don't have to pay for this land, basically. The DDA doesn't have to fund it, but we're still working out the document details on that part. To answer your question about the Kalamazoo River Valley Trail, I believe there's an easement there. Well, there's an easement on both sides. That would be connected. The 2 would be connected, and that would be in site plan review. that we would do that. So just so you know, that's definitely something that we want to keep in place. We think there's great value, and we want to maintain the connectivity of the trail. And actually, this project, a big piece of this is connectivity to the whole downtown. So connectivity from here all the way down the creek over to the entertainment district, Hopcat, Bells, just make that a well-lit, and we've shared some of these ideas and have a lot of support for them, to make that a well-lit, walkable thoroughfare with the string lights and activity and more.
Sorry, that's the end of your 10 minutes. Are there any questions for the applicant?
I just threw out a question, I guess. It might not be really relevant, but in your rendering, you mentioned the first 2 floors as parking, and it's probably way too early in the process, but how does retail mix in with that? Is it just retail on the corners or something, or?
Sure. So we do a combination of parking, and then on the ends, we have the mixed use. So that's kind of sandwiched in the middle.
That's what I thought I saw in the drawing.
And you're right, it is a little early. We're still in concept design, but we want it to be mixed use. And part of it would be amenities for the buildings. Part of it would be maybe a restaurant, and those types of uses. One thing I didn't touch on is between the buildings and the creek, that's going to be outdoor activation space. So, and part of the big reason for the vacation is so we can beautify that stretch. We want to make it put a calming mechanism in there, maybe a speed hump, maybe a boulevard type thing, so you don't get traffic flying through there when you have 400 residential units and a big investment in that area. And to help so we can improve the area a little bit more than a just your everyday public street.
So we're, if I may,
Yeah.
if we're, how do I say, we're proposing to vacate that space for you,
Correct.
but you're still intending to have traffic go through there.
Correct.
So and you're slowing it down, would you be considering reducing to 1 lane or anything like that, or?
It would be 1 lane in both directions the way it is today.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have 2 questions for you. So the first one, as you know, we have the county courthouse that'll be coming closer. And we'll definitely have more traffic, more people parking. And with you looking at housing and things of that nature, how is that going to work with the traffic flow and with that hotel and things of that nature that also sitting there, plus the cancer center and all those different things? How are you going to be able to control that? Are you going to be adequate to control your space with parking and with the flow of traffic?
Right, and that will be part of the site plan, and so we confirm that we have adequate traffic patterns. So currently you have Park Street and Westnedge, 2 primary streets that are immediately adjacent. We don't have a final determination on traffic patterns and that. We haven't gone to that step yet, but we're pretty confident that even with everything that's happening in that area, the streets are going to be able to accommodate the increase. And we'll work with the city. We always work with city planning and the city and the city engineers to figure these kind of things out.
And then my next question, with you guys taking that over, are you going to be adding in any places where people have to pay for parking if they were decide to be on those streets, or will it be open for people just to park in general, free of charge?
So in that stretch, there would be parking, and that parking would probably be for we haven't even talked about if we're going to sign it or if we're not going to sign it, but there definitely will be parking in this stretch of Cooley Street. So whether we're going to sign it as parking only for the project, we haven't gotten to that part yet.
Gotcha. And then my last question, this is doesn't necessarily have to do with planning, but when it comes to your complex coming together, with the idea with the city of Kalamazoo looking at affordable housing with this project per se, will it have any affordable housing? Because we do have students that are low income and we do have residents that work in the city that may want to possibly live there. Are you guys going to have a mixed housing, or is this all market price?
We haven't finalized that yet as far as the percentages, but so for instance, 619 Porter, another project much smaller in scale, we have 10% affordable housing in that project. I assume this would probably be the same. As you know, the world's been turned upside down on economics and costs, and so we're trying to balance all that out, and so I would presume that we're probably going to be in that 10% affordable range at a minimum, but that's still, that isn't solidified yet.
Okay.
But we understand the need for affordable housing and the need for all housing in the urban core. And any housing is good housing. I mean, we do need affordable, but bringing more into the core is going to help all of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask about the scale of the project, knowing that it was going downtown, looking at the future land use of the property or the area for downtown, how the scale of the property, how you saw the scale of the property fitting into what downtown will look like moving forward.
Sure. So you're talking about height. Are you talking about height? Yep. And so we kind of had a similar discussion with the Exchange project, and how when we move forward with that, to make sense of the development on that corner, it had to be taller, and so that's kind of where we're at here, to bring more units in a more dense area. We're going a little bit higher, but we feel it fits with the downtown. It's a different type of project. It's not another Exchange. It's a different type of exterior, a different type of look. I think this isn't really to scale, but it will be good to have some residential closer in proximity to the campuses. This isn't student housing, but we have students that live in the Exchange. And so to have it be walkable to campuses and to downtown, we think it's a good fit for that location. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. And I will just echo Commissioner Chambers' comment about affordable housing and making sure that is an integral part of your planning. I realize we're talking about street vacation, but want to echo and encourage that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open the public comment portion of this hearing. If you are watching virtually, the call-in number is 888-382-9556. That should be posted on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching. But again, that number is 888-382-9556. You can call in and we will hear. And if anyone is present here who would like to participate in the public comment, you will have a 3-minute time limit. Please remember to state your name and address before presenting your comments, and then sign in at the podium. Do we have any comments? Do we have any call-ins?
No calls at this time.
Okay. Commissioners, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor respond yes.
Yes.
Any in opposition respond no. Okay, the public hearing has been closed. Does city staff have any further comments? Okay, before we move into debate on a motion for this request, do commissioners need any further technical clarifications from the staff or the applicant? Okay, can we have a motion on the request? please remember to state the full request here.
I will move that we recommend approval of the street vacation to the city commission with the condition that utility easement for utilities and stormwater management be established.
Second.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Swan, thank you. Sorry. Okay, Commissioners, we may now have a discussion on the motion. Would anyone like to speak to the motion at this time?
I would just say that the staff report makes a clear argument for support of the motion, and it fits all the criteria of the A through G in the report that it needs to. So I don't think we have a lot of room there. That I think support is called for. And certainly the issue of affordable housing is serious and something we need to certainly hope the applicant will be serious about, but it's not relevant to the issue at hand. So that's where I am with that. Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, may we have a roll call vote?
Burgess,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Harrison, Swan,
Yes.
Bias.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Okay, we will now move on to PC number 2208, Amendment to Appendix A Zoning Ordinance. And this is a text amendment to remove the wellhead protection overlay from Chapter 3 of Appendix A of our zoning ordinance. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Pete Eldridge, the Assistant City Planner, and I'm here this evening to introduce the amendment from the zoning ordinance for the removal of the wellhead protection overlay, which is in Chapter 3 of the ordinance. And once I'm finished with my rundown of the normal process when it involves a text amendment from the zoning ordinance, I'm going to introduce Jean Talanda, the Environmental Programs Coordinator, to speak more in detail to what's in the works and why. But again, this is a text amendment to remove the wellhead protection overlay from Chapter 3 of Appendix A of the zoning ordinance. And this is part of the wellhead protection update, and also an update that involves the stormwater performance standards. Up on the screen, what we've got is just an overview of the city and where those wellhead capture zones are. And obviously you can see that they extend well beyond the city boundaries. Why is this effort being undertaken by the Public Services Department? There's a number of reasons. The primary reasons are that there have been some changes over the years to the number of wells in active use, the pump rate, and other matters that have caused a change in the delineation of the capture zones. So some of the capture zones may have grown, some may have shrunk. And so the Public Services Department worked with EGLE, the Michigan Department of Environmental, Great Lakes, and Energy to get new capture zone maps approved in 2021, which now need to be added into the city's code of ordinances. The second primary reason is the city recently entered into a new water rate agreement with the surrounding townships and cities, and part of that agreement involves within the ordinance involves requirement that those adjacent jurisdictions have to adopt their own wellhead protection ordinance. And then the third reason for removing this from the zoning ordinance is that it's really, it's ordinance regulations that Public Services has been enforcing, and they are, continuing to, bolster these ordinances and the performance standards for stormwater management. And it's not something that the zoning inspector is involved with. Normally, if it's a zoning regulation, if there's enforcement issues that need to be handled, that goes through the zoning inspector. So it really needs to be in its own chapter of the Code of Ordinances and not within the zoning ordinance per se. So what does this process involve? And I'll just be brief on this. So, as I mentioned, this image just shows the first page of Chapter 3, and you can see the number of overlays that are in the zoning ordinance and the specific one that's being removed. Really, there's the removal of this reference in the table, and then the subsection that applies to this table, which is section 3.5. Those are really what's being pulled out of the zoning ordinance. And as far as noticing of this action, we did send notices out to all property owners within the capture zones. That totaled over 14,000 mailing of postcards. And we did receive a number of calls, which was good, so we could explain exactly what was going on. And as always, there was a notice in the Gazette. But this what's happening tonight is step one, and then step two will be this text amendment going up to the City Commission level for approval of the removal of the overlay from the zoning ordinance. At the same time, Public Services will be bringing forward the amendments to Chapter 39 of the Code of Ordinances to create the new chapter that will house all the wellhead protection standards. So this is by no means, we're by no means taking anything away. We're just moving it and adding to the wellhead protection standards. And lastly, just touching on the rationale, because this is a text amendment, so we do have certain criteria that all text amendments need to meet. As I mentioned, this is consistent with the master plan and the objective of the good environmental stewardship as far as managing stormwater runoff, erosion, and contamination of water. The new wellhead capture zones have been approved by Eagle, as I mentioned, and that was in 2021, and they still have yet to be formally moved into the city's ordinances. And the consolidation will bring together the ordinance regulations, the new delineation maps, as well as all the references to the performance standards under Chapter 39. And lastly, as I mentioned, this new ordinance will also have applicability to the capture zones within and outside the city of Kalamazoo, with the requirement that adjacent jurisdictions adopt a wellhead protection ordinance. So with that being said, I'm going to bring up Jean Talanda to give a few more comments and add some depth and description to this.
Thank you. Am I close enough? My name is Jean Talanda. I'm the Environmental Programs Manager. I'm with the Water Resources Division of Public Services. So in my position, which is kind of a unique position, I am responsible for maintaining compliance with a lot of environmental regulations. That includes the Wellhead Protection Program, which oversees our drinking water supply, and the drinking water supply is 100% groundwater fed. So I also oversee our stormwater permits to discharge stormwater to any of the creeks, any surface water bodies in the Kalamazoo River. Also responsibility lies with any contaminated sites which the city has liability for, or other extraneous things that come up, such as last week finding 3 orphan tanks at the new courthouse that we had to abandon out of Kalamazoo's right-of-way. So a big part of my job is both stormwater, environmental, and wellhead in the site plan review process, of which the wellhead protection ordinance and the stormwater ordinance are a big factor. So all of these regulatory compliance type things are always kind of living in that. One, we have new technology. We also have changes in how our assets are taken care of, designed, decommissioned, and redeveloped and added on to. So we're changing our system constantly, and our regulations require us to keep on top of that. And so the wellhead protection program itself is designed to protect our wells. So we operate between 90 and 100 wells around the city and outside of the city. And where there's a cluster of them, we call that our well field. And that area around that well field, which is all, is all groundwater fed, drinking water supply, we want to limit the land use and the chemical use. And that's the reason for the wellhead ordinance. There are other mechanisms allowed by the state, but this one in particular is fitting for the city based on the fact that we're 100% groundwater fed. So the ordinance has existed for a while. I don't know the reason it was put under the zoning code in particular, but we are obligated that when we change our operations, the capacity that we pump, the different wells, and we take out wells that we're going to add wells in different areas, we have to model these areas so that we don't overuse or underuse our aquifers, and at the same time that we know where our water is coming from. And within a 10-year capture zone, meaning an area in which in 10 years we will pull that water into your drinking water supply, that area we want to protect. So we have highly technical models. We hire consultants to take on all these changes and incorporate them in the model, so we do that periodically. The last change in the wellhead overlay was in 2015, and we have changed a lot. We've had the PFAS issue in Parchment and Richland. We've had to extend water mains. We've had to change our pumping. We have gotten rid of wells. We're adding new wells, and we incorporated a lot of the new technology in the modeling program, as well as the new data, pumping changes in Portage and everywhere else that affect us. So the state mandates, we did it. We did do it. It is official in terms of the state, but in order for us to apply it in site plan and other means, as well as our stormwater, we need to get this updated. So the ordinance is not very detailed, but we have performance standards that explicitly set out standards, and we felt this was a good opportunity since 2015 to take advantage of all the changes, upgrade a number of new things, which I can explain if you're interested. But we took time to make sure that we thoroughly went through these documents if we're going to take the time and effort to do this, to do it properly and upgrade everything. So we're upgrading the performance standards both for wellhead and stormwater management, as well as increasing some of our environmental regulations within the city. This is really for public services kind of advantage to take it out of the zoning code so that we can more clearly use it for compliance and not have to go through all of the regulations and the stipulations to the zoning code, which don't provide any advantage for us. We are a map-based overlay. We are not based on parcels, which doesn't fit well for how we use the wellhead overlay. So, and the other driving force for us is that we do have that new water rate agreement with the jurisdictions around us, and it's been very difficult to have control of land use or chemical use in those areas once they extend beyond our boundaries. This will force the townships and so forth to mimic our ordinance and be based on our overlay, and they will get this established in the next year or so. So, very important document for us. Is there anything else that I can answer for anyone?
Technical questions? Can you explain, just because this is being recorded and anyone who's listening might not know, what is groundwater?
Groundwater is the groundwater that you can't see that is in the ground beneath your feet. If I had a groundwater model, I could show you, like, if you could see it. But it is literally, we put large pumping wells in the ground, and our wells go down 100 feet to, I believe some are as deep as 400 feet-ish, and it depends on where you are in the city, how deep a well we can put in and how much we can pump out of it. But we have tremendous aquifers here that are interrelated, and this ordinance and these capture zones are integral in us, maintaining these large areas where we pump the water out of the ground, which then is treated and becomes your drinking water supply.
I have another question.
Okay.
You mentioned PFASs, and I know forever chemicals have been a common topic of people who are concerned about water safety. Can you speak a little bit to the new ordinances and the new requirements for protecting people from these forever chemicals?
Well, the ordinance does not specifically cover that.
Okay.
It covers how we restrict land use, how we restrict chemical use. For example, if you have a certain amount of chemical use or storage on site, we would ask you to put in maybe a spill response plan or be prepared for emergency release. We would want to know explicitly what you have on site.
Mm-hmm.
Also, is it an advantage for the fire marshal, so he knows when he goes into a fire what's there.
Okay.
But we do not, this ordinance does not regulate those contaminants per se.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Is there an applicant? Are you the applicant? Okay. Sorry. So at this point, I guess we will open up the public comment portion of the hearing. Again, I'll repeat the phone number for anyone who would like to call in. That number is 888-382-9556. And anyone here who would like to speak, please come up to the podium. You will have a 3-minute time limit. State your name and address. Seeing none, do we have any call-in commenters?
No calls at this time.
Okay. Commissioners, we do need a motion to close the public hearing.
A motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Chambers, support by Harrison. Okay. All those in favor respond yes.
Yes.
All those in opposition respond no. Okay, the public hearing is closed. Does city staff have any further comments?
No further comments.
Before we move into debate on a motion, do commissioners need any further technical clarifications from staff or applicant? Okay, commissioners, may we have a motion on the request? And I'll repeat it, the motion on the request, which is a text amendment.
I make the motion to approve the text amendment to remove the wellhead protection overlay from Chapter 3 with the Appendix A zoning ordinance.
Motion by Commissioner Harrison.
Support.
Support by Swan. Commissioners, we may now have a discussion on the motion. Would the commissioner who made the motion or anyone else like to speak at this time?
No, I appreciate the education behind the importance of the overlay and the removal, the upcoming collaboration that the parks, or not the parks, but the services is going to provide to the the appendix to the information and just the overall education about the groundwater. I think it's just important that we move this forward.
Yeah, I agree. And it sounds like it's more important zoning code. So I appreciate city staff's also diligence to make sure that what's in the zoning code is appropriate for the types of work we'll be doing. And what's not appropriate is given its own chapter. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Burgess,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Swan,
Yes.
Bias.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you for your work. Okay, the next on the agenda is discussion or other action items. Are there any action items, discussion, or unfinished business at this time?
There are none.
Okay, moving on then to the city planner's report.
So I have a few updates for you this evening. First, business that goes to City Commission. At the meeting on Monday, they approved, based on your recommendation, the public participation policy. And so that document has been officially updated. And when we renew our redevelopment ready communities certification this fall, we'll be able to provide them with a new document. If you recall, there was a community of practice element in that document, which is an internal staff group. We have our first meeting set for a couple weeks out, and we're really looking forward to working together across city departments to more effectively engage our community. So a little update on that. There are a lot of things happening on streets in Kalamazoo, if you may have noticed or have heard. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight is stuff that's coming, right? Starting on August 15th, the West Edge and Park project, the traffic calming and bike lane, sidewalk, crosswalk project, will go into its next phase, starting that week, the week of August 15th. So that is going to be installing a protected pilot bike lane south. So we did kind of downtown and north side. And so the next phase will be in Vine and the south side neighborhood. So it'll go from where it stops now, which is about Michigan Avenue, and go all the way down to Maple Street. So past Midtown Market, and you'll be able to do a turnaround on Maple there to go whatever direction you weren't going. So that's pretty exciting. That work will happen in a couple of phases. It'll start with signs, paint on the ground, and being protected with cones, like a line of cones all the way through from downtown to Maple Street. And then in September, late September, early October, actual delineators will go in. And these will obviously be a little more durable in the winter months than cones, because again, this is a pilot project. We're trying to understand how adding bike lanes and, on the north side, also on-street parking impacts traffic speeds, impacts the level of comfortability of pedestrians and cyclists. So we'll be studying it as it goes through. And this will be an opportunity for us to also study, for the first time, this type of lane in Kalamazoo in colder months. And how maintenance happens and how does it work and what do we need to be doing. So we're really excited about this project. So starting the week of August 15th, that work will begin. Go ahead.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So how is this different from the bike waves that we see just outside?
Sure. So that's a great question. So many of you may have noticed right behind City Hall on Lovell Street, we have a pilot installation of a protected bike lane. It's actually, the correct term would be a cycle track versus a bike lane. So bike lanes are traditionally, they go with the flow of traffic, one in either direction, or if it's one way, obviously just one side. A cycle track or a bike way is another term, means that it's bidirectional in that space. And so this is a protected bidirectional cycle track or bike way. It's a project that's supported by the city of Kalamazoo, but it is actually led by Vine and a group called Mode Shift. And so together. That installation is done. It'll be up through the end of September. And again, there's bike counters out there, and we'll be monitoring that. And there'll be some overlap between that project and the bike lanes that go in on West Netcham Park, which will be really nice because then, the network is just continuing. So slightly different application. Those pieces, those waves, I believe it is the League of Michigan Bicyclists. I hope I'm saying the correct organization, but you are able to rent those. And so those we've rented or Mode Shift and the Vine neighborhood have rented those from that organization to be able to use, again, between now and the end of September. That installation will be in. We have, this month, we're doing meetings on Convert Kalamazoo Avenue, which is the project that's running on Kalamazoo Avenue between Harrison to the east, all the way to Douglas to the west. It is going to be a massive utility project, right? These are some of the oldest utilities in the city that we expect to find underneath the streets. There's a lot of survey work, both above and below ground, happening right now. And when the street gets put back together, it'll be put two-way. We are in the process of talking to the community about this project, not only to get input, and I'll talk about that in just a quick second, but to let everybody know that this work is coming. And so we have so far been in Stewart and the Douglas, Stewart neighborhood. We are at Douglas National Night Out and Northside National Night Out discussing this project. Tomorrow and every Friday in August, we'll be at Lunchtime Live discussing this project. We have our own art hop tomorrow evening outside of the Community Planning and Economic Development offices, which is 245 North Rose Street. We will be out there talking about streets, and we have a little art project for folks to do. And we have a little Lego Kalamazoo Avenue to help those that like to be more tactile in how they provide us information. So we'll have all of that tomorrow night, and that's from 5 to 8 p.m. Other events coming are August 19th. We are going to be, weather permitting, at Arcadia Festival site. We're going to do a walking audit during that time period, and as well as engaging people, asking questions. The things we're seeking, so the fact whether or not it's going two-way, that has been decided. It is going to be a two-way street. What we are seeking input on is then how do we make it as user-friendly as possible, particularly those north-south crossings, right? And so what does that mean, and how are people moving across Kalamazoo Avenue? Downtown, on Kalamazoo Avenue, there's the entertainment district all the way on the east side, Bell's, Hopcat, Water Street, Maru, all of that stuff over there, and people moving across the street there, moving down to more in a civic space with the county and the courthouse, and then, potentially as you get to West Edge, an event center, right? And so we're trying to figure out to make sure that, whatever we're doing, this is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of project, probably even more than that, once-in-a-generation kind of project, that we're creating spaces for people to move that are really what we need, right? They're in the right place and are serving people. Same thing for Stewart neighborhood, right? Woodward Elementary is on one side. There's a lot of folks that work at Kalamazoo College and Western Michigan University that are crossing those streets there. And so, where do we put our improvements, and what does it look like? So that is going on right now, all that engagement. We just scheduled a downtown business forum meeting, so kind of targeted at downtown businesses. That's in conjunction with Southwest Michigan First in the Chamber. And that meeting is going to happen. It's going to be a breakfast meeting on August 31st. All of these things are available online, imaginekalamazoo.com/projects/convert Kalamazoo. And so all of that information is there. And so we're looking forward to talking to as many people as we can. What I have been really pleased with so far is that every time I start a conversation on it, I've been getting, yeah, I heard about that. And so I feel like we are, starting to do a good job to kind of get that message out there that the work is coming, and now's the time to kind of work on some details. We also walked the corridor today, Kalamazoo Avenue, actually all downtown, handing out flyers for all the meetings. So hopefully we'll get a lot of people out there. You can also provide input online. There's a QR code on the flyers. You can go to imaginekalamazoo.com, and there'll be a survey there on the project page that you can fill out. And that is probably it. It's been a lot of transportation work as of late.
Thanks. I think the next thing we're moving on to is the 2022 site plan review spreadsheet. Oh, yeah, sorry.
My question with the two-lane project, have you guys touched bases with the Kalamazoo admin building or staff or the Kalamazoo County administration to be in communication to even do something with the county so that as employees, they know the changes?
Yep. So in addition to all these large meetings, myself and public services staff are going around to all the major property owners and all the stakeholders on the corridors and having small one-on-one meetings to able to answer kind of very specific questions related to properties. We have met with county staff on the 16th. We are going to be attending their committee of the whole meeting to make a presentation to commissioners. I stopped by there today, and every department got a flyer for all the meetings and posted them in the lobby. So yes, and again, we're trying to do that all over town with folks. We met with Metro Transit this week, for example, as well.
And then I just have one more question for you. When it comes to the bike lanes and things like that, I have heard from residents, because I know when we had planned a lot of these things, it was prior to COVID, and a lot of people have forgotten. Has the city thought about doing a forum about how to drive with these bike lanes and getting them reinvested? Because I know a lot of residents are very confused, and I feel like we need to do another pop-up to say, okay, this is what's here, to kind of get everybody back on board again, because I know a lot of people didn't realize this was happening.
Right, yeah, for West Engine Park, all the engagement was done last year for it, and it's a slow phased rollout. Yes, staff is working on some education materials for drivers, and some of it is very basic stuff, right? It's a solid white line. You are generally not intended to cross that line. But, and then, what does that mean? What does it mean when there are the bollards? What are all the symbols? So we're trying to work up what that looks like so we can share that hopefully in advance of the work that will start the week of the 15th. We're also going to have big leaderboards out starting Monday at either end of the West Engine Park corridor, the ones that you see in big construction sites that will say lane shift coming, pilot bike lane. Anywhere where we're bagging meters for the pilot, we're going to have signs, this parking is not going to be permitted here after this date, please go to this site for more information. So we are really trying to hit all of the places. Plus, everyone who lives or works on the corridor got a postcard about it as well. So we are trying to hit everything.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask a question about the pilot program. So,
Sorry.
about the pilot program. So, after the pilot program, what would be the steps for the community to hear the results, or at least to know what the results?
Absolutely, I can.
And then one more, just what would be the process for the city to implement it after the pilot process?
Sure. So with all of our traffic calming projects that we've done in recent years, and definitely with West Engine Park, we do speed studies in advance and do traffic studies in advance, and then repeat them when the implementation has happened, and then share those results. We have sent postcards. We have done door hangers. We have spoken at neighborhood meetings. Hey, here's the impact, and we often provide an opportunity for a survey. Here's what we've seen and studied as a city. What do you think? And go back and forth. And so we'll continue to do that with West Engine Park. In terms of making it permanent, so we'll study it, right? And if it does indeed have the impact that we expect, West Edge specifically is planned for some water work in the coming year, next year, I believe, if not the following year, north of White's, moving up into the Vine neighborhood, so new water work underground. At least at that point, if not before, we have the chance to put in, change the lane markers, put in some additional bollards, and make it a more permanent application. All the work we've done on West Edgem Park has kind of been pilot, right? We know that West Edgem Park can't go two-way right now because of all the network changes. Those are the streets that need to kind of wait to go two-way. And so staff felt that they were charged with trying to figure out how to create slower, more comfortable streets for everyone. And these are the things that we're trying. It's all paint, signs, and bollards. So it's the opportunity to do things very inexpensively. As we kind of see how they happen, we have the opportunity to say, okay, do we need to move curbs? Do we need to put bump outs in? And that's where you start to get into that more permanent installation. Instead of bollards, do we need some sort of curbing, or, there's lots of options out there.
Other questions? Next item is the site plan review spreadsheet. Anything we need to pay attention to specifically on there?
I just have one comment related to the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I was found out that part of the spreadsheet got cut off, so we will email around the remaining portion of the spreadsheet.
Okay. I think next on the agenda is non-agenda comments from the public. Do we have any non-agenda comments? Any call-ins, Pete?
I'm checking the call-ins right now. We do not have any call-ins.
Okay. Next is our City Commission liaison. Commissioner Pradel, thanks for being here.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the city for all the work they're doing on their non-motorized strategies. It's very exciting to see, and certainly for Vine and Mode Shift for their work. It's exciting to see some innovative work done around the city. Wanted to take a second. I had very mixed feelings, but mostly overwhelmingly a lot of my heart was full to see Commissioner Pitts walk into the City Commission meeting earlier this week, but certainly there's a little bit of a heavy reminder about the toll that he took and the violence problem that persists in our community. And so that work continues, but we continue to keep him in our thoughts and his family as well. Wanted to share some updates from commission meetings just so you hear what's been happening since we last met here. On July 18th, we adopted some amendments to ordinances in Chapter 22 of the Kalamazoo City Code of Ordinances. That was about a little over 24 different changes, everything from previously it was illegal to be a fortune teller in the city of Kalamazoo to spitting laws that date back to the Spanish flu. So, but there are some other ones that I'm sure you maybe have heard of that were a little bit more pervasive in the last couple weeks. And we continue to try to educate the public about what we were trying to accomplish by decriminalizing our laws. Decriminalizing our laws does not mean that we're rolling out the red carpet to make things that should not be occurring in our community legal. We are still very much a community that wants to make sure that people know that these actions are against the law, but they are civil infractions instead of misdemeanors that remain on your record for the rest of your life. So that was July 18th. At our last meeting, which was just earlier this week on August 1st, you heard City Planner Anderson talk about the adoption of the updated public participation policy. We're really excited to get that through. We know you all unanimously passed that. We did that as well. And it provides that predictable process and planning guide and toolkit for us as a community, which is great. We also adopted an ordinance to revise Chapter 20B of the Kalamazoo City Code, which licenses and regulates medical and adult use cannabis. So there were some changes to that, mostly to reflect some changes in like legislative and regulatory changes since we made that happen in May of 2020, but also it changed some of the rules, I guess, that we have in terms of how we issue our local approvals for that as well. So I wanted to share that. I also wanted to share, I follow some educational content that comes out by a group called Strong Towns. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them at all. There was a really good article I recently read, and if you get a chance to look it up, I definitely want to encourage you. But the title was, if we build cities for kids, we build cities for everyone. And I'm a dad of 3 young kiddos, and I know a number of you have kiddos yourself. But I thought it was a very compelling argument. They referenced an article that was recently in the Atlantic. I checked that out as well. But it just kind of speaks to the fact of a lot of what we're doing and what you're seeing. And you'll see some of those community outreach. And I love the fact that they're calling those outreach events Streets for All, right? And it just kind of reminded me of that article from Strong Towns about trying to create communities that are for everybody. I believe that is it. I wish you all a great rest of the week, and thank you for your service.
Thanks, Commissioner Pradel. Do any planning commissioners have any miscellaneous or last comments for the evening?
I will just say I appreciate the city staff members here just presenting us with all this information, definitely stepping out with the public forums to let the public know about the different changes, and just educating people on the new things that are coming in the city of Kalamazoo. And I really appreciate the work that you do, because I know it's not an easy job, but we appreciate it, you getting out there and really touching bases with the public.
Anybody else? Your comments have been echoed. Thanks to city staff. Also, thanks to everyone for your patience with me chairing the meeting. And if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
Obviously, they can't conduct any business without a quorum. Can't open the meeting.
But can you open the individual cases? Could you?
I think you can open the public hearing
But that's it.
and adjourn it.
Yeah. So you could do that.
Yeah. Administratively, I think you need to do that, but
Right.
you can't conduct any business. I dispense with all the presentations.
Right, and just open.
Open the public hearing, just have an announcement, or next regular meeting.
Okay.
Just
Yeah,
have an announcement.
that
We
would
don't
have
have a quorum, we can't
especially
conduct
for
any
this
business.
issue, which is
Open the
like,
public hearing, open it, and then adjourn the meeting.
okay, good. Yeah, I mean, especially with this issue,